All right, we're back. Tasty Crypto Show. I'm Ryan Grace. My co-host today, Dan Cecilia, and special guest, Dan. We've got Ace of Flowmatic on the show with us today, continuing our interview series every Wednesday. Hackerman Ace on X. Give him a follow if you're not following him already. Ace, how you doing?
Good. Thank you very much for having me, guys. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on the show as well. And we've got some volatility in the markets, as we were talking about just before the show started. So we've got a lot to talk about here today. But before we do, I want to jump into it right away and get a little bit of your background for everybody that might not be familiar with you. Maybe take us on your crypto journey. How did you get started into crypto? And maybe more so recently, what are you doing in DeFi?
Yeah, definitely. So my crypto journey initially started probably around like 2016. I initially had seen something on Instagram where people were kind of talking about Ethereum, and I think the price was really, really cheap at like $200 or a little bit lower than that. And I would just keep checking in on it every week, and it would keep going up. And I was like, you know what? Let me take a chance on this crypto stuff and see what's going on. And I started getting deep into that stuff. And shortly after, I got into trading, and it got to a point where I was doing really well in crypto. So I decided to go ahead and drop out of school so I can do some of the crypto stuff a little bit more. And it's just been snowballing into what I'm doing now. And for the past about 4 or 5 years, I've been full-time crypto for a little bit now, and I absolutely love it.
And I guess to dig into that a little bit more, maybe we jump over to Flowmatic. What are you doing in DeFi with Flowmatic? What are you into today?
What I'm doing in DeFi is pretty much everything on chain on Solana. I've kind of removed my trading on like centralized exchanges. I don't necessarily do it that much unless I'm doing some sort of hedge or unless I'm doing some sort of option play. So it's mostly focusing on some of this. Unfortunately, it's the meme coin stuff that I have to focus on since that's where the attention's at. And with Flowmatic, what we're doing is we're building a DLMM terminal, which kind of falls into play with a lot of the LP situation on Solana, where people can provide liquidity. And I'm sure everybody's pretty familiar this year with all the Trump stuff going on, and they were one of the biggest ones this year that used the concentrated liquidity tools, the DLMMs, and we provide tools for all that stuff.
Yeah, and with Flowmatic, as you know, in crypto, community is everything. What's your approach to building like a really solid core community over there, specifically for DeFi and on-chain traders?
Yeah, when it comes to the community, I mean, I've always looked at it something as like an organic approach. I feel like that's something that goes much better in the long ways, especially when you do it with folks who have been in the community for a long time. So that's been my approach always. I value the mutuals that I have on the Flowmatic account. I value the people who've been in crypto and don't necessarily give up and are always looking for something. So I've always approached it with finding folks that are in the trenches, and that's how kind of we've built up Flowmatic at this point. Is we've had a bunch of the OG users who've been in crypto, and they've started to learn that there's more to the space than just buying and longing a token. There's these LP methods which are much different than when they were when everybody was doing it on Uniswap v3. Now you have this stuff available on Solana. So just teaching all my community that stuff, and everybody loves it when everybody's making money together. So I think working that with the community is probably the best approach, because at that point you'll have more feedback from proper users, and that stuff will just reflect in your product later on.
Yeah, for sure. And you said Flowmatic, you've specifically been focusing on DLMMs on Solana. Can you give us a high-level explanation of DLMMs? Obviously, we're familiar with like standard Uniswap pools or even concentrated liquidity, which Uniswap v3 came out with. But what about DLMMs? Why, like, how does it work, and why is it different?
I mean, it's not too far off from what's available on Uniswap v3, so it's still kind of the same thing where you're able to concentrate your liquidity. I guess the easiest way for me to explain it to folks would be it's like when you're setting up a range for like limit orders, whether it be to the upside or whether it be to the downside, you're able to put your money in that specific area. And versus a limit order which gets filled out, or a bid order that gets filled out, you're getting paid out for as long as the price stays within your range. So it's sort of like an option strategy that you do, trying to stay within whenever price is going sideways. And so that's kind of how I would explain DLMMs to, I guess, in a very high level aspect. So allows you to control something versus like an AMM, which is unlimited on each side. With the DLMM, you have a little bit more control, precision, kind of same thing like the Uniswap V3 stuff. Except on Solana, you are able to use a lot more higher of a fee rate, and they have something that kind of like combines everything in with, I think there's an echo. Yeah, it just combines everything in with like the swaps that happen on Jupiter, because you have Jupiter routing, which kind of takes into account with some of the DLMM pools, and it's just way more beneficial on Solana than it is on Ethereum, just because I'm able to charge something like a 4% fee. I'm able to get up to a max of 10% fees on single swaps. So when there is a lot of volatility, it just ends up being extremely worth it.
Wow. So that's on a per trade basis then, where you receive a fee of, like you mentioned, 4 to 10%.
Yeah, every single swap that happens that goes through your specific liquidity, let's just assume that you're the main LP and you're the only person in there, and there's people that are aping 5K per size in your specific bin position or price point. You'll be the person that's making that 4%, and if it's a large order, you'll make that 10% per swap that's going through. So when this stuff was happening back in April, when nobody was doing it and it was literally just me and maybe like 10 other people, I mean, it was amazing because I'm the only LP capturing all the volatility by myself. And that's still the case right now. It's a little trickier right now in the markets where you have to be a little in and out. But for my option traders and people who know how to kind of understand volatile markets and being able to be quick about things, it's still extremely profitable. Just have to adjust your risk a little bit.
Damn. And I thought the 5 basis points on a Uniswap V3 pool was pretty good annualized. What platform do you do this on?
So this is all on Meteora. I mean, there are other platforms to do it on, but they have platform fees. And the main reason I do it on Meteora is because they're eventually going to do that Meteora airdrop. So every dollar you make in fees is 1,000 points. And it's pretty easy to get up there on the leaderboard. And since not many people know how to do LPing on Solana until about like 2-3 months ago, it's pretty easy to kind of get yourself up there on the leaderboard and get a lot of points.
All right, I'm checking this out. I know Dan has mentioned this to me off the side of the desk at times, but I've got to check out Meteora because
we've been farming this during work, so we haven't even gotten anything done the last week. We've just been farming Meteora.
Hey, you should definitely check it out, especially if you like understand options. That's kind of like the main lore that I kind of try to get my bigger brain friends into. I'm like, if you guys are able to play volatility with options, you can do the same thing with DLMMs without an expiration risk, and it's pure spot risk. And that just makes things so much more simpler for me, because prior to about like 1.5 years and 2 years ago, I was doing perps, I was doing options, I was doing so many other things that relied on directional plays or just a lot of volatility. And I would have like that leverage position open, which had a liquidation. I'd have options, which had expirations. But DLMMs, I can get the best of both worlds. I can play something that's just in range without having to bet directional. And I can make the same amount of fees that I would with an options contract that goes a little OTM as I would with a DLMM play that just stays in range for a few days with significantly less capital risk too.
I got a question here from Juicebox on X. He says he wants to know the story about the Bowden DLMM and how insane that was.
That was in the beginning. That was like when around like April time when Bowden was going really crazy, and there was like really insane swings that were going on, like 50-60% swings, and there was people that were buying 20 to 30K buys in every time. And I was the only person LPing it, and it was fantastic because there would be days where it was like 10-15K in fees in just a couple hours, and then towards the end of it, it got even better. So it was just a lot of fee stuff that was going through. So it's just something that kind of got me hooked in. I was like, unbelievable. I'm able to make double or triple whatever my initial LP was. So if I would put in like something like 20K, it wasn't something hard to walk away with 30K, 60K back in no time, just because there was so much volatility. It's a little different now because there's more players in it, but it's still very good with like lower capital. You don't have to go all gung ho and go 6 figures in. You can still do very well with 30 to 40K.
So Ace, for anybody that's familiar with options trading, obviously on Tasty Live here, you talk about some of these LP strategies as being similar to option strategies. Is it fair to say that that's a strangle or an iron condor where you've got the range, you want it to stay within the range, you're implicitly short vol? Is that how you think about it?
Yeah, exactly. You're basically shorting the vol that's happening at the moment, or you're doing something like a straddle or something like that. So yeah, is exactly how it would end up being.
Awesome.
It also ends up being like kind of like the calls and puts as well if you wanted to. I just am not somebody that likes to go directional with my DLMMs because I know how difficult it can be when it's options too.
For sure. Yeah, I think when you're kind of acting as the market maker there, you want to take the delta out of it in a sense. That said, I want to switch gears on you really quickly. And as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we got a lot going on in the markets. Let's talk markets now. For anybody that's been on X, I mean, it's just super bearish out there because the price hasn't gone up every single day like we wanted to. But what are you seeing? You know, how are you thinking about price action, whether that's Bitcoin or ETH, Solana? Like, what are you looking at? How are you thinking about things right now?
I've been kind of posting it on my Twitter page. I use Ichimoku, and that's like the same thing that the Robinhood CEO guy uses. And so it's been pretty simple for me. I'm just looking at the one-day chart, and I'm looking for a cloud entry on my end. If we can get that cloud entry, that's basically what's going to be a long play for us. So I don't know if you can go on my feed or not, but that's basically all I'm looking across the board. Bitcoin, Solana, a lot of the majors, they're all setting up with the same exact play across the board. And it's just a matter of waiting like a few days to see if we get that entry. If we get that entry, I'll go long. If we don't, then I'm going to have to pray and hope we don't go too far down.
Yeah. Do you think this is more of a correction that's underway versus the beginning of a kind of more extended bear market?
I mean, we needed to pull back anyway, just because we've been going so high. I see option players are positioning for like 70K, and I'm seeing order flow coming down to like the lower 68K levels. So I do think that it's going to be a little lower. I mean, for me, I've always been a fan of the whole sell in May and go away thing because it works for me in stock markets. And it's kind of applies a little bit more in crypto now that the markets have matured. So I kind of follow that same plan, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing right now. Since May is coming up, we're seeing a little bit of a pullback. We'll probably see one last final pullback, and then we should be able to continue back on summer. But I just don't see a hard dip really happening where like everybody's expecting 40, 50K. It's just we're in such a different environment than we were before to get those kind of pullbacks. Maybe on Ethereum, we'll get down to like sub 1,000, but Bitcoin, I have a hard time believing we get that low again. Yeah,
and speaking on Ethereum, on X, you've said that you'd rather play ETH's ecosystem rather than trade Ethereum directly, especially with foundation selling pressure. What DeFi projects or tokens in the ETH ecosystem are you eyeing for the next bounce, and why?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the main ones would probably be like Premia. Premia is probably the number one thing that I'm looking at, and the main reason is because they're building products to like improve my risk factor in crypto. So that's probably my number one. I guess the other one would be is I'm more of a fan of finding newer projects that are coming out or protocols that have things you can do airdrops with, because the airdrop space has been pretty healthy for the last couple months. It's been very easy to find something, whether it be on Ethereum, whether it be on like AVAX, or whether it be on Solana, to farm for a little bit and walk away with like a higher 4-figure airdrop for just a little bit of participation. So I mean, and like my comment for like what I said about finding things in the ecosystem was mainly because, I mean, when I look at things like, for example, XMW is one of the ones, they're like a Bitcoin miner type of situation. While Ethereum was going down or kind of staying stagnant, those things were just pulling out multiple X's, and they were a legitimate project. So it does take a little bit of research, but I rather not look at some of the dinosaur projects unless I know they're going to be doing some sort of token revamp, or they're actually pulling in some sort of revenue that I know is going to end up working out in my favor later on. But long term is really hard in crypto nowadays. I feel like it's kind of unfair to push those capital gains on people when it's really hard to hold something for a year without it going down like 75, 80%.
Yeah, it's been tough, especially with Bitcoin market cap dominance at, I mean, I think a new 3-year high here today, you've had a very short time horizon for a lot of things to work. We've got a question from our chat on YouTube, and if anybody is streaming this on Tasty Live, wants to ask a question to Ace, jump over to the Tasty Live YouTube channel, get into the chat there, or hit us up on Twitter. But just a quick one from Edward here. Would you play the Near protocol? Any view on that?
Yeah, Near is actually one that I was actually very bullish on last year, and I don't think I've changed any of my views, and I believe they're still kind of grinding out everything. So yeah, Near is one of the ones that when I feel like the market's taking a turn and we're finally starting to reverse out and the vibes are getting back on, I mean, that's on my top of the list to start figuring out bags and starting to scoop those things up. So yeah, definitely very bullish on Near. I like that project.
Awesome. The chat likes you, Ace. We've got some kudos to you over here.
Appreciate everybody hopping on. Thanks for joining.
Yeah. I've got a question for you. As a lot has kind of been happening quickly here with the new administration. Trump kind of stood up a while ago and said, "I'm your crypto guy," and I think for the most part we've seen some follow through there. How do you see the DeFi landscape, industry, whatever you want to call it, evolving here, maybe on the back of some regulations? I mean, is there anything that you're paying attention to that has you bullish or maybe even bearish as we see some regulatory developments, as we see some legislation make its way through?
I feel like the regulation is a double-edged sword. Like, we asked for it. I don't know how it's going to end up being when it ends up actually coming in place. But I mean, the one thing I guess would be a positive is you saw the shift the moment he came into office, where projects were a little bit more apt to kind of go with the U.S. side of stuff and kind of start coming back over here. So I think that's where the main regulations are going to end up being beneficial for us, is us actually being able to make products in the US and not have to go overseas and being able to be compliant with what's available right now. That's probably the biggest bet for us, because I know several companies right now who they make great revenue. They're not located in the US. And that goes same with a lot of exchanges. Once exchanges introduce any kind of leverage or anything, it's pretty much off the table for any kind of US users. So if America wants to continue being on the forefront of some of this stuff, I think they're going to need to ease up on this regulations, and we'll have to see if we can get some of these companies either back in the States or start creating an incentive for these companies to open up in the States so users can actually use some of these products. I mean, it's just a shame because there's a lot of things that I would like to use, but I just don't have access to. And if I want access to them, I have to go through a whole process of becoming an institutional investor in the States, and not very retail friendly in the States right now for crypto.
Yeah, it really hinders innovation. I'm personally curious to see if we get to a point where there's some value that's unlocked. When you look at, what comes to mind for me is probably like the Uniswap token or Radium, where you have these exchanges, they're cash flow positive or revenue positive, if you want to think about it that way. But there's no real way for that value to accrue to the token itself. I mean, I get that we can vote on whether they'll pass some of the fees on, but I think that if you get some regulatory clarity, then you could see a lot of value unlocked for some of these exchanges or these decentralized exchanges.
The DEX space is absolutely booming. There's so much money to be made for so many people, whether you're building trading tools, whether you're building arbitrage stuff, market making stuff. There's just so much money flowing. I mean, just Meteor alone, I believe they've done almost like 178 billion in volume or something crazy like that. So, and then now you have Pump Fund, which just came out with their own DEX and everything. So yeah, there's just tons of opportunity in crypto. It gets even more crazy every year I get into it, because I'm mostly focused on Solana stuff and AVAX stuff. And just on those sides alone, my time is like completely taken up doing AVAX projects and AVAX market making, and then doing stuff over here on Solana here and there. And I'm totally missing out on everything that happens on Ethereum, There's so many other chains, ADA, and I mean, I wish I could multiply my body.
So you have suggested that there's probably a little bit more pain coming in the market here, especially with the tariffs. But what on-chain trends or metrics do you track to know when it's time to load up and get long, or take advantage of some of these opportunities?
It just comes down to like the levels that I've seen before previously in the years. You typically see something like where it's like a 40% retrace, 60% retraced, or there's the classic 80, 90% retrace. And that's kind of like my main metric that I look for, see which kind of companies are still building and yet they've kind of hit that requirement point. Some of them might not end up hitting down to that 80, 90%. They might trend around like that 40, 60%. So that's kind of my main metric to look for, is like who's still building, who's still producing products for their community. Are they actually having any kind of volume rolled through their products? So I like to do a little bit more research on the utility side of stuff. I know right now the market is in a way where you have to do meme coins, and that's kind of the approach you have to take in DeFi. So I mean, I don't think the meme coin stuff is going to go away. So it's basically just using all my profits from meme coin to continue DCAing legitimate projects that I see are going to be worthwhile in the future. What doesn't matter what chain it's on.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're involved in or what you're looking at on AVAX? I personally have never owned the token. I'm not super familiar. It is one that we recently added to the list at Tasty Trade. But what has piqued your attention over there?
Yeah, I've actually been in the AVAX ecosystem now for like 2-3 years now. I actually got started with it in the arena, and the arena airdrop was really nice, and it was still ongoing. So I'm able to kind of grind out the arena airdrop. And Meteora and the DLMMs, they kind of got the inspiration from AVAX's liquidity shapes, which is nearly the identical same thing. So I'm able to do nearly the same thing I'm doing on Solana on AVAX as well with market making, and the environment is much different. I don't have a lot of people that are constantly dumping right away, so I'm able to market make a little bit better over there. More projects are doing airdrops and stuff, so the airdrop farming is fairly easy, and there's just a lot of volume going on to where I'm not worried about the downside as much as I am on Solana. Like Solana, things only last about 48 hours, maybe 24 hours. Over on AVAX, they at least last like 2 weeks for me.
You have some time.
I need that. I can't be focused all the time.
Yeah. Is there one specific DeFi trend or on-chain trend you're seeing right now in 2025?
I mean, it depends on like who you ask. For me, I would say this DLMM stuff is a pretty big trend right now. A lot of people are starting to LP again, and it's a big difference from previously when people were LPing. Previously, when people LP'd, it was normally the whales that were making a lot of money, and it wasn't really a space for like retail traders. But now with the DLMM stuff, I'm seeing so many more users that are finally understanding this stuff, and I'm seeing more and more people become experts on how to do LP stuff and realizing that there's market making tools available for retail. So that's kind of like the emerging trend I see on my side. There's obviously the whole RWA stuff, which I think is extremely huge. Like real world assets on chain is a big thing for me, especially when it comes, because I'm a stock trader. And so I would love to see some of those companies or some of the commodities on chain. That would be huge. So probably those things, like LPing is back again. Real world assets is a big thing. And I'm sure everybody would agree with the AI agent stuff, but that's a little tricky on that side.
When you think about RWAs, is there a macro trade there? I mean, I kind of see people mention Ethereum in the same conversation with real world assets. Is that accurate, or is there another chain that we should be focused on?
I mean, I don't necessarily know I don't think it's like a chain specific thing. I think there's several places that are working on like the RWA stuff, not only chains that are on Ethereum alone. So I think you could probably find that stuff elsewhere. I would say the leaders are probably going to be the ones who can kind of get stuff listed the fastest. Like I see a couple people that started listing oil contracts. I saw a lot of people starting to do silver and gold. So for me, I'm like a big precious metals trader, and that's my outlook on a lot of things. Is since Dixie's going down, there's a lot of crazy stuff happening in the world. So I kind of lean more towards finding any kind of RWAs that are related to precious metals.
So we got a couple minutes left here. I want to know what your one bold prediction is for Bitcoin, crypto, or crypto broadly, or DeFi over the next year.
Let's see.
Yeah, something crazy, Ace.
Yeah, something big.
All right, let's see what we got. I mean, Ethereum, unfortunately, I'll have to give a bearish take on that one. I think there's more of a chance of something else coming up or more people kind of going towards their own chain. So I would say a crazy prediction would be is ETH is probably going to get replaced or at least not be as important as other things will. So there's that take. As far as like Bitcoin goes, I mean, I have no choice but to be very bullish on it. As far as like a timeline goes, maybe I don't necessarily have one, but for people who say it's not going to come back over 100K and it's not going to hit higher numbers, I mean, we all said that about 100K, that it wasn't going to hit up over here. And now we have people who are buying millions and billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin at these kind of levels. And so it just leads me to believe that, I mean, 200K is likely possible. Maybe I don't necessarily have a timeline for that one, but next run we have, I could totally see 150K to 200K per Bitcoin.
I love it. Yeah, this has been a good show,
you
man.
Guys, what's your guys' take on some of the markets? Are you guys bullish? Are you guys bearish?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'll just jump in really quickly. I think we've got a bit of a short-term correction here within a larger bullish secular trend. And I think that we ultimately are going to see prices when, we might not stay there. But if you've been in this long enough, you have seen some crazy shit. And I think that we will absolutely see that here again. I think it is contingent on kind of the macro backdrop and what happens with monetary policy. That tends to be the fuel that you need to see. But yeah, I'm with you on the 200,000 plus Bitcoin price. I think you see alts do some crazy things. So I'm very bullish, to say the least.
Yeah, I'm really bullish as well, price aside, but I'm just excited for what people are building now. Like, I feel like we have a ton of consumer applications or just like applications that are easy for normal people to use. I'm really big in NFTs and just like on-chain social. I think you mentioned the Arena before, and I believe the Arena is a social app on AVAX. So really interested in like on-chain media and like the revival of just like content creators using on-chain to monetize their stuff. So yeah, I'm really excited about some of the consumer apps coming out aside from just price.
Yeah, we've been really excited to have you on the show as well, Ace. We've unfortunately run out of time, but we've got to have you back at some point here in the near future. We'll check in on some of all of our predictions as well, our forecasts, I suppose. And yeah, again, just want to thank you for coming on the show here and look forward to speaking to you again soon.
I'd love to come back on and maybe pick your guys' brain on some of these questions.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got a lot of good feedback as well. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in here. Make sure to follow Ace over on X at HackermanAce. If you haven't already, get over there, give him a follow, and he'll certainly be back here on the show. But that's going to do it for us this week. We will be back, Tasty Crypto Show, on Monday. Victor Jones is up next with The Price of Truth. Until then, I'm Ryan.
I'm Dan.
Peace.